sad to hear how an innocent act, like, just going back to your story and how when you began drinking, you did not know that it was going to lead you here. And now it has even led you to an abusive relationship. And, there is fight going on. But what happens?
So, as I said, this continued for the next 6 months. And what I can remember is feeling my self-esteem continuing to lower.
Yeah.
Mind you, initially I already had a low self-esteem.
Yes, you had
And I really had this desire just to want to be accepted. But then now what I didn't, the very thing that I did not want was happening to me.
you,
The person who I thought, because at that time you're thinking this is the one person who understands you.
Who loves you.
Who loves you. He's the one now who's abusing me. He's the one who's hitting me. And my self-esteem really went low. Low completely. I remember it reached a point where I would just sit in the house even without trying to cry. Tears would just roll down my face because I would look at my life and I would wonder, is this all that my life is going to be? Because I would look at my life and think that, oh my goodness, I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. And then there's also another incident which I want to share because I love using my testimony for the sake of even the girls out there. Absolutely. So that they don't make the same mistake that I made. So at this time, I remember I got pregnant again. And you can imagine I wasn't excited because with everything that was happening in my life, I was in a point where I was thinking, I was not quite sure this is the person I wanted to end up with. And now I'm thinking a second baby with him. So, and then even for him, he wasn't excited with it because he was still in school. We both did not have jobs. So the only option that we thought we had at the time was to do an abortion. And I did not even know where I was going to start with this. And so I remember he hooked me up with one of his friends who told us of a place somewhere here in Kware, a hospital where I could do the abortion. So on the day when we decided to do it, we left together. And as we were going, the guy leaves the matatu halfway. He was actually high, but then somewhere along the way, he leaves the matatu. And now I remain in the matatu, me and his friend. And so I was bent on doing this. So we continued and we went and he took me to the hospital. And I remember that time, I think probably I was around 3 months pregnant. And I remember the doctor telling me, this is not a baby, don't worry. This whatever you have inside you is as small as a bean seed. And so he told me, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tablet inside of you and then it's going to start the abortion. And so I was like, okay, it's okay. So the process itself at the time wasn't painful and he did put the tablet. But I remember leaving there as we were going home, the pain started. Wahoo, I'm telling you, I've given birth to 3 children, but this pain was intense. The pain was intense. And I remember telling myself, I might probably die. I don't want to die in this guy's house. I'd rather die in my parents' house. So I decided I'm going home. So I went home. I still cannot remember how I entered the house because I don't remember like discussing anything with my parents. But I remember just going to the room and going to sleep. And the pain persisted throughout the night. And the following day, my parents left for work. And I stayed and the pain just continued. Like every minute, the pain would intensify. I remember at one point just crying in my bedroom. Once again, I cried out to Jesus. I was just crying and then telling him to not allow me to die. And I remember, I think in the process of just crying out to God, I felt something like a whoosh sound. That's the best thing I can say. I just felt like something had moved. And I thought, okay, the bin has come out. So I decided, let me go to the loo. And at my parents' home, we have an inside toilet, and then we also had a pit latrine. So I decided to go to the pit latrine. And I remember going and I went to the loo and I checked myself and I didn't see this bin. And I'm wondering, where is the bin? Then when I was in the middle of checking, I just felt something come out of me. And I remember bending to check, and I saw this small baby hanging from me, and it fell in the loo. It didn't have skin. And I remember I started screaming because the reality of what I had done hit me. I cried. And I felt so alone because there's no one I could tell about this. The one person who was supposed to be with me had bailed out on me somewhere along the road. And I remember I just felt sort of like a blackness came over me. I don't know how best to understand, to explain it, but that's what I felt. I felt like a blackness had come over me. And I just went back home, back inside the house, and I had to act okay. I was grieving, but I had to act okay. So on the same day, my boyfriend comes back and he asks me to go with him. And I accepted, not because I was really excited about it, but just out of obligation. Because at this point, something had changed. I no longer felt like I really wanted to be with him. I think I was more numb. I didn't feel like I had any feelings even towards him. But I just went with him. And so we went back and we continued with our lifestyle of drinking and just smoking and stuff. But something had changed between us. We were not as we used to be.
The connection.
Yeah, the connection was no longer there. So we continued, and I remember, I think a month after this, something else significant happened in my life. About this time, there's a day we had gone out drinking, me and him, and there was this local pub where we normally used to go and drink. And so this day we went and we got high, and we got high until late. And so we had to go back to his place. So when we went back, I remember we found the gate was locked, and he climbed the gate and he entered. Most times when we got drunk, he'd be the one to get more drunk than me. And this wasn't different even this time. But I think just the fact that I wasn't really excited with him, I decided I don't want to climb the gate. So I told him I couldn't. And so I went back to the pub. I didn't really have a plan. I just wanted time to myself. So I went back to the pub and we drank. And of course, when it comes to a local pub, everybody knows you. You are like friends, you're like brothers. And I remember there was this guy who was also one of our friends who was more or less like a brother to us. The kind of relationship we had was more like a brother. The kind like when we don't have food, sometimes he'd bail us out when he doesn't and stuff like that. And he was living at his parents'. He was raised by a single mom, so he was living with the mom at the time. So him and his friends wanted to continue drinking, and they were going to go to other pubs. So I told them I don't want to go with them. So because we were, as I'm telling you, we were more or less like brother and sister. I told him, okay, I'm going to go to your house. And he's like, it's okay. My mom is there. My sister is there. You just go. And so I went to his house. And till now, I don't understand what happened, because in all the time that I've drunk, I don't remember blacking out to the point where I don't remember anything. But this one, the last thought that I remember was me going to his house and him and his friends leaving to go to other pubs. So the next memory I remember was waking up and it was so bright outside. And the worst thing was I woke up in bed with this guy. And I got so shocked because to me he was more like a brother. And I remember feeling so violated because I remember asking him, what are you doing here? And I remember he was also kind of a bit shocked. And at that point, I remember he was, he said, it's like he started consoling himself. And he was literally crying. And he was telling me, sorry, I'm sorry for what I have done to you. And I'm asking him, I don't remember anything. I was out. What happened? How did I reach here? And the only thing he was doing was crying. And then he told me, please don't tell your boyfriend, because we used to be like a very close knit group. And then I told him, I can't hide this from him. I have to tell him. And so I remember going back to the house, and it's almost like, I don't know, because those times we didn't have cell phones, but I remember entering that door, and he just looked at me and he asked me, what happened? And
It's like he knew.
yes, it's like somehow, I don't know what, and he asked me, and I remember telling him, I don't even quite understand, but this is the situation. And I'm telling you, in that moment, I was feeling like someone had taken advantage of me. And I think when I was telling him, I was hoping he would understand. But the blows that he rained on me, I remember he hit me. He hit me. He hit me. I reached a point, I just became more numb, if that was possible. And I remember I just sat there and I just let him continue hitting me. And when he was done, I told him, I want to go home now. And I stood up. And as I was going home, I remember telling myself, I need to understand what happened. So I go to that friend of ours and I was asking him, please help me to understand, because that was not my nature. I never used to. I was loyal even to my boyfriend at the time. And so I was asking him what had happened. So he told me, like, he just came to the house and he found that I was blacked out, and he just decided to take advantage of me because I did not know what was happening. And he was there and he was telling me he's apologizing. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I need a drink. And even him was like, I need a drink, because I was just at a point where nothing much mattered. And so I remember...
You kind of lost yourself.
Yeah, I remember us going to our local pub. And as we entered the pub, guess who's seated at the counter?
No.
My boyfriend.
No way. And you're with this guy
And
now.
I'm with this guy. And the first statement that came out of his mouth was, there goes the guy who just slept with my girlfriend. And everybody in the pub knows me. They know I'm his girlfriend. Yes. Everybody knows the kind of relationship that we had. And I remember at that time, I felt as I wished the ground could crack.
Because of the shame.
The shame that it would just crack and swallow me. And then something just came over me like, it can't get worse than this. So they start fighting there. I go to the counter, I drink, then I start walking. I decided, let me go home. And so when I went home, I started having this. Now I think in hindsight, I can say that I started having panic attacks. They had started a bit prior. Sorry, I think I'd forgotten that part. They had started like a week before. And I remember the first time the panic attacks came, I literally thought I was dying because I just felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt my heart racing and I thought for sure I was dying. And then again, God, my foundation. I remember just telling God, please, 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 if you help me to survive through this, like if I don't die now, yes, I'm going to stop smoking. Mind you, I had tried for such a long time to stop smoking. I remember even there were times I would start in the morning and I'd tell myself I'm not going to smoke today. But halfway through the day, I can't even concentrate. I have headaches. But I remember in that moment telling God, please, 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 if you don't, I'm going to stop. And the minute the panic attack stopped, something weird happened. I just lost all craving for cigarettes because I remember even the story that I'm telling you where we had gone drinking. On that night, I wasn't smoking. I was in a pub with people smoking, but for some reason, I just did not have the craving anymore. So this time when I go home, the panic attack started again. And I remember I felt... I was so confused. I was in a bad place. So I remember going to the kitchen and my sister was there. And I remember telling my sister, I think I'm going to die. And so she looked at me and she's like, what have you been smoking? And so I kept quiet. Then I don't know where this statement came from. I just told her, I think I'm going to get born again. And I remember she laughed. She told me, for sure you're going to die. And so
Yes, she couldn't understand what you
couldn't.
Yes.
I also didn't understand what I was saying. It wasn't like something that I thought about.
Yes.
So I remember standing from there, still feeling the panic attacks, which at that moment I'm saying I still felt like death was coming. And so I decided, okay, if I'm going to die, let me die in bed.
I'm interested to know. I mean, did you really eventually get born again?
I am headed there.
I stopped hurrying you the story.
I am headed there. I'm not very far.
Okay.
So I decided to go to bed and die in bed. So I went and I entered in the blanket and I tried to sleep. But my heart started like racing and I'm sweating. And I remember also telling God again, please, if you spare my life, I'm going to serve you with the rest of my life. And I think at that moment I did get born again, but it wasn't something that I thought much about it. It wasn't something that I didn't know I had made that commitment. So I remember after that, my boyfriend came again and then we went back with him. This was something that would happen on and off. So we went back again with him. And I remember the same scenario, him drinking and stuff and him being mean. By this time, he would get mean. Every time he would remember that story of that guy, he would threaten me. I remember there's a time he was even threatening to kill me. And I was so scared. And when he saw the look of fear on my face, he started laughing. So this was the scenarios that was there. So after me telling the Lord that I'm going to serve him for the rest of my life, like 2 weeks later, this day I just leave the house, and this time I'd taken my daughter. So I leave the house and we're just taking a walk, just like a normal day. And I happened to reach a place where there was a crusade which had been hosted by Nazarene. So I decided, what the heck, let me just stand here because I don't have anything to do. So I stood there, and as this guy is talking, and he's talking about salvation and whatever, and I'm feeling like there's a connection with what he's saying. And I feel like I need to make a public declaration of my faith. But I'm thinking, these guys know me too much. You know, they've seen all the drama. They've seen us falling on that road. They know everything. And I'm thinking, if I make this declaration and then I'm not able to walk the walk.
To live up.
Yes, surely. So I just didn't do it. So there's something else which I have to add. So in the middle of this, it gets a bit chilly. So I decided, let me go back to the house and get my jacket, mine and my daughter's. So I go back to the house and I get our jackets. So at that time, I'd left my boyfriend blacked out. So when I go back, he just sort of like raises his head and he opens his eyes and he asks me, where are you going? And I tell him, there's a crusade somewhere which I'm going to. So he blacks out again. And so I go back, I stand there. And we stand there and the crusade is almost done. Altar call is made. People have gone and given their life to Christ. For some reason, I can't move from there. And then when we're standing there, guess who comes? My boyfriend.
No.
Staggering.
He comes to the crusade.
Yeah, to the crusade. And he goes, I don't know how this was, but he goes direct to the people who had organized the crusade. And he tells them, there's someone I want to introduce you to. So he comes and he pulls me and he brings me to them and he tells them, by the way, I think she wants to get born again.
What?
Him. Okay. That was just, till now, I think I always think of that scenario and I'm amazed at the way God works. Yes. You know, he will use anything. Yes. So they asked me, for real, do you want to get born again? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so they take me through the sinner's prayer. And after that, even him, he said he wants to get born again, and they pray with him. And then we left. And all the way back, he's just telling me how he cannot stop drinking and smoking. I know he has made the commitment, and he's talking all the way. And all the way, I'm so silent. something had happened, something had shifted. And I was so silent, I wasn't talking. So we reached there, and I feel like I want to know more about this God. And so I remember there was this neighbor of ours who was SDA guy. And all along he would always tell me about God, but me I'm skiza too. I don't pay much attention. So this day I went looking for him.
You're like, I want to know, yes.
I tell him, please help me. This and this has happened, and I want to know more about this God. So he gives me a Bible, and I go back with it to the house. Let me tell you how amazing God works. My boyfriend, who at the time was very skeptical about God, he used to say that Jesus was the greatest con man ever. He knew the Bible. And for the next 2 days, he actually took me through the Bible.
This boyfriend who does not believe in God.
Yeah, for the next 2 days, he actually took me.
God works in mysterious ways, guys. I mean, he really does.
I'm telling you. So 2 days later is when I just had the voice of the Lord telling me, go back home. And that is how I just took my stuff. I told him, I feel God is telling me to go back home. So I went back home. And thankfully, when I went back home, my parents didn't ask me anything. I just went home. And then I remember for the next couple of weeks, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't hold conversations with people. It was like I was in a world. The only thing that I could concentrate on was the Bible. Only. I would literally wake up in the middle of the night to read the Bible. I would stay the whole day just reading. And I would read and I would read and I would read. And as I would read, I remember one thing that struck me was I read about the love of God. And I remember crying. I cried. I told God, this is what I've been looking for all my life. I've been looking for this kind of love. But yet I couldn't find it. I've done things to try and gain this love, but I couldn't find it. And I remember telling God, the one thing that I've always looked for, which I couldn't find, this is what I'm going to give people. And so, but I also remember something else. I told God, I know I'm supposed to love you, but I don't know how. You need to understand, for me, love wasn't a natural emotion. It wasn't what came easily to me. And so when I was telling this to God, I was sort of scared of him because I thought I'm commanded to love him. I'm supposed to love him, yet I don't love him. So when I was telling him that, I was saying it in fear, but I just felt like I needed to be honest with him. And I remember just feeling in my spirit him telling me, spend time with me. And that's all I did. And I would read the Bible and I would ask questions. And I would see the way he's dealing with people, and I would tell him, me, I think you're weak. Because this kind of love, people are doing wrong to you and you're forgiving them with all your power. But in the middle of that questioning and whatever, I started learning what it means to love God. You see, I believe we don't love God because it has just come out of us. We love God because he has loved us first. And when we understand the love of God, then also we learn to love ourselves, which is something I had to do. I had to learn to love myself. And then we also learn to love other people. And for me, that was a big deal, especially with my daughter, because before I did not really even know how to love her. She's a very emotional type, the kind who wears the heart on the sleeve, the kind who will come and kiss you and hug you. And every time she would come and hug me, I would freeze. Because, to me, that was a foreign emotion. But somehow God started helping me. And you remember when we started, I told you that I have a passion for the word of God. Because for me, that is where I got my healing. I'm telling you, the healing that I got from the word of God, it's not something that I got from anyone. I would read, I would break time down, I would cry, I would ask questions, and healing would just happen. Yeah.
Dotty, I have seen you minister to people. I've seen God use you to be able to love on others sincerely. And now, hearing your story, I kind of begin to get where that comes from. That you had to go through so much pain, and God literally had to teach you how to love him. And that's how it comes out so easily for you to be able to love others and to be able to minister to others. I am completely mind blown by what God is able to do with a personal story. That, our journeys, we've walked into different places, yet all the things we've gone through, eventually God uses them for his glory.
Yeah.
That because of your experiences, now you have a passion for young people.
Yeah.
Because of your most difficult moments, now you're able to pour into others and be gracious with others. And the reason we are doing these stories, guys, is so that we are able to learn that our journeys are important. We know your journey could be different. My journey is different. Maybe someday I'm going to tell you about it. But these stories that we are telling are so that you're able to see that from beginning to the end, the mistakes you've made, the triumphs, God is able to package them all and then eventually use them for your glory if you surrender them to him.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I must say that for me, this has been a journey with the Lord. I got born again in 2007. I've been walking this long with the Lord.
Wow.
And he continues to heal me. And I must say that I've seen goodness, him showing me goodness that I never thought
Yes.
I would be able to experience. As I said, I am married to a wonderful man.
Yes.
It took several years since me getting born again. I got married to a wonderful man, and now we have children together.
Yes.
And this far I can say it is the Lord.
Yeah.
I have learned I love serving him. I love loving people because I believe, and especially the ones who people, or the ones who are not easy to love.
Yes.
Or the people who sometimes are rejected, because I know what it means to be there. I know what it means to make the wrong choices.
Yes.
I know what it means to feel like you're not significant. But I also know that the same God who took me from there is the same God who desires to bring them out. And so that is what I feel my quest is, just to tell people how much God loves them and that he wants to heal them.
FYI, even as she continues, I attended Dotty's wedding. It was a glorious, beautiful, beautiful wedding. And yeah, I'm just telling you this for you to know that God is able to give you that dream. By the time maybe you are with your boyfriend in this broken relationship, I'm sure you would not have imagined that, that one day you're going to be married to this wonderful man, that you're going to have this wedding and children. I like that part.
Yeah. So I think for me today is just an encouragement to people out there that God is able. Maybe there are those ones who are in a place where they don't know how tomorrow is going to be. Maybe they feel that they are at the end of their life. I want to just encourage them to not give up on God, because God has not given up on them. And whatever their story looks like today, God is able to use it for good.
Amen.
Yeah.
As I told you earlier, this channel is supposed to encourage every Christian girl out there. It's easy for you to look at the ladies in ministry. Currently, Dotty is a pastor. I mentioned in my previous video that I'm a pastor. And it's possible for you to look at us now and think that we've got it together, think that we are holier than thou. But I hope this allows you to know that we are ordinary people with ordinary stories. That God can use you regardless of your journey, regardless of where you are at today, only if you submit yourself to you. We'd like to hear you. We'd like to continue this conversation. So please subscribe to this channel, but also share, with us, comments down there, inbox us for any lady out there who you're feeling lost, disillusioned, and you need someone to walk with you in this journey. We can promise you that Dotty and I are here, and we would be more than willing to hold your hand. We would be more than willing to walk with you until you get to a place of wholeness and healing. And reach out to us, inbox us, and our number is right on my page. Yeah, we have a Facebook page, God's Girl equals Girl Power. You've seen it. Go right there, inbox us, and we will engage. So thank you for watching. And if you want I must say this, us to feature your story. We want to learn from one another. Also, inbox us. Just let us know. We would love to hear from you. We know there are immense, amazing stories out there that we would like to hear. So reach out to us. Thank you for keeping it locked. Dotty, hasn't this been an amazing time?
Yeah, very nice. I thank God for
Thank
this
you
platform.
for coming.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Pastor
And I am
Wahu.
hoping to have you back again. And I'm sure there are other stories.
Yeah, there are.
Other experiences
Yeah.
for you to share with us. But asante sana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Karibu. We love you guys.